2, 1, go.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Writer, Mother, Monster. I'm your host, Laura Ehrlich, and our guest today is Kate Baer. Before I introduce Kate, thank you all for tuning in, and please chat with us during the interview so we can weave your comments and questions into the conversation. If you enjoy the episode, please also consider becoming a patron or patroness through Patreon to help keep the podcast going. You can look up details on the writermothermonster.com website. Now, I'm excited to introduce Kate. Kate Baer is an author and poet based on the East Coast. Her first book, What Kind of Woman, was a #1 New York Times Instant Bestseller and featured in publications like Harper's, Vogue, and the Chicago Review, and the New York Times. Her second book, I Hope This Finds You Well, is a collection of erasure poems created from notes she received from followers, supporters, and detractors, an art form that reclaims the vitriol from online trolls and inspires readers to transform what is ugly or painful in their own lives into something beautiful. As Publishers Weekly said, in these confident and fearless poems, Baer suggests that the deepest and most vulnerable love is found in life's imperfections. Kate lives in Pennsylvania, where she has 4 kids, ages 10, 7, 5, and 3, and she describes writer motherhood in 3 words as determined, focused, strong. Now, please join me in welcoming Kate.
Hi,
Kate.
Hi,
thank you
for having me.
Thank you for joining me. I'm really excited to talk to you as a longtime fan of your work through Instagram and now through your wonderful books. I'll hold up What Kind of Woman here.
There she is.
And yeah, so let's start with the 3 words, with your 3 words that describe writer motherhood. Tell us about, let me look at them again, determined, focused, strong.
Yeah, I think if you're a mother and a writer, I think that you have to have some determination. You have to have some strength there to both make time and to use that time to write. Women are notoriously wonderful multitaskers, and I think sometimes it can be a detriment because you're writing, but you're also thinking about lots of other things that have to do with household and relationships and children, and which can sometimes, like I said, be a detriment, but I also think it can be to our benefit. And I think what I have found with so many women and mothers who are writers is that we have a great ability to when we do set aside time, get something done. And I think that when you're a mother, it forces you to have to use your time as wisely as possible. And so I think the determination and the strength comes from there. Oh my goodness, I think
you did there for a second. Yeah, so in a second we'll talk about how you managed to write 2 books with 4 small children. But first, tell us about your kids a little bit. So they range in age from 10 to, is it 3? 2.
Yeah.
10 to 3. So my daughter's 5, sort of like in the middle there. What if you, well, that's a broad question. What if you kind of learned and experienced throughout 10 years of motherhood with a 3-year-old still in the house? So like that's a lot of children, a lot of like a lot of experience right there.
Yeah, I think to hold things very loosely is something that I've learned. Behaviors and hard times and things that are going well aren't always going to change. There's nothing is forever, and that's good and bad. Your kid being such a wonderful eater, the second you announce that on your Facebook feed, that will change. And same with the bad stuff, there's been so many horrible stages and things that have happened over the last 10 years, but they're not forever. And it's hard to see that in the moment. It's still difficult. I will say though that it is easier now to have a 3-year-old than it was 8 years ago, because I know that he will not always dump out all the goldfish and then purposely step on them like he did today all over the kitchen for me to clean up. I know he's not going to do that when he's 10. So I think that is something that I've learned.
Yeah, I remember the early days when my daughter was like she was just kind of learning how to sleep by herself, and then she'd have a hard night and come into bed with us, and my husband was so concerned that like we're ruining her forever, and if she sleeps in bed with us she'll never sleep alone again. I was like, she's not going to be like 30 and sleeping with her parents, she'll be fine. But it does, it kind of feels like everything is so important the first time.
Yeah, everything feels very precious and important the first time you do anything. There's so many life lessons to be learned when you have kids that there's just so many things to learn. I feel like you learn more as a parent than you're really as a kid. You're trying to teach your kids all these things, but really you're just teaching yourself. You want them to be patient, but really you have to teach yourself to be patient, and you want them to hit all these marks, but really you're just teaching yourself that stuff doesn't matter. And so I don't know. I feel like that's something you have to learn over and over again.
Yeah, that sounds familiar to me. Did you always want to have kids?
Yeah, I always wanted to have kids. I didn't necessarily want to have 4 kids. That was not planned. But yeah, I definitely always wanted to have kids. Yeah.
What was your own childhood like? What was your mom like?
My mom was a teacher. Both my parents worked. I have one sister. We lived in the Philly suburbs. Had a pretty quiet childhood. Definitely some ups and downs, like anyone else. But yeah, I don't know. That's such a hard thing to describe, a whole childhood in a few sentences. I don't really know what else to say about it. Nothing to note is, I don't know. Yeah, my family and my part, there are definitely things that I don't write about, talk about in interviews. As far as my family goes, I try to keep that private. But as far as like generally my childhood, yeah, it was really nice to have a sister. We were really close in age. Obviously, we're so close in age and close. And my house was so much quieter than mine is. It was just 2 quiet girls. I have 3 boys and a girl. It's really loud all of the time. So it's much different in that way.
Yeah, I'm also intrigued by people who always knew that they wanted to be parents. And I've said this before to other guests, but that was not my experience. It took me a very long time to like come around to the idea of having kids. Even though my childhood was wonderful, my mother was a great example, it felt like such a commitment and something that would take me away from writing. So I'm always intrigued by writers who say they've always wanted to be a mother. Did you also always wanted to be a writer?
Yep, I always wanted to be a writer. I feel like that those 2 things kind of just at the same time always. I don't remember a time when I didn't want to be a writer or a mother. I've never really thought about those 2 things together, but they have gone together in a way that I guess I wouldn't have known or predicted as a child or a teenager or a young adult. But yeah, I've always wanted to be a writer. I've always wanted to be a mother. Both of those things are nothing like I thought they would be, but I'm lucky enough that they both came true.
Okay, so we'll have to get to how they are different than your expectations in a second. But So you never really thought about them together and like how they might complement each other or conflict with one another. I find that so interesting because it was like what consumed me about my decision to become a mother was how that would impact my writing. So were they very like just separate things for you? How did you consider those two parts of yourself growing up?
Well, I think as a child and a teenager, I wasn't really necessarily thinking about the strain of motherhood impacting writing because I wasn't really aware of that or understanding that. It's it's so. How can you know what it's going to be like to be a mother? I mean, there's not. I mean, I had kids pretty young. I was in my late 20s, and so I guess I just kind of went in feet first in that endeavor. Writing has been something that I've done since I've been a child, so that to me feels like I've always done that. I always knew I would do that in some capacity. Maybe not publish books, but I always knew I always was doing it. I never stopped. And motherhood also felt like something that I would always do. I didn't even question it. I honestly didn't question either. It just felt like something that was always going to happen, which is weird, I guess. But yeah, I don't know.
No, I think everyone's so different. I always thought it was weird that I couldn't figure it out like until I think I was 35, 34. I was finally like, okay, I guess I can have a child now. It's going to be like, so
Yeah.
who knows? But
Yeah,
yes.
everybody's different. Yeah, everyone's journey is different. Yeah, mine just was feet first, no real thinking about it. Just, of course, I want to have kids and try to figure it out later, which has been a real journey. I mean, it's not like I always wanted to have kids and then I had them and then it was like, okay, this is great. It was more like, oh, I'm having kids and they're great, but wow, what a shit show. I have to figure all of this out and figure out how to have time for myself, figure out how to also have a career. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's better to think about it first, probably.
I don't think it's any easier to think about it first. It's just more angst, like upfront angst. But because it's so individual to have to figure it out afterward. And I think everyone I talked to essentially said it's a shit show. So it's interesting. Yeah. But how did you? So talk me through the shit show part of trying to figure out how to balance everything. And whether you actually achieved balance, which I think is maybe elusive, but I'd love to hear whether you think so.
Yeah, I think the magical unicorn balance of motherhood and career is completely impossible. I think you can have it all, but just not at the same time necessarily. There's always something. There's always someone's losing in most scenarios, and so I think it's just coming to terms with that. I've certainly, had my share of angst over being away from my kids and also being with my kids too much, and finding that balance. I think is just a constant thing. I don't think that anyone achieves it and then just lives their life. I think that changes all the time with kids and their needs and their ages and what's going on with your kids. And, things can change at any second. Some kids got anxiety. Someone's having a hard time. I've got a deadline coming up. There's just so much that changes on a day-to-day basis. And I think, sure, I've had times of balance and feeling great about things, but it's such a fragile, families are so fragile. People are so fragile. Careers are so fragile. And I think it's just something that I constantly have to work on, and I think everyone works on, especially if you're balancing kids and writing. It's just something that is always on the docket to figure out on a day-to-day basis.
Totally. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about writing this book, What Kind of Woman, and when So how, what do I want to ask? What was the time span of writing the poems? And can you take us through some logistics of how you would actually write while mothering?
Sure. Yeah, I wrote that book in a year. I had maybe a quarter of it at the start of like the publishing process. So I pitched that book with maybe a quarter of it done. And then, yeah, I wrote it over the course of the following year. It's like a January to January. Um, and it was great. I've been writing for 10 years on the internet, personal narrative. I'd also been working on a thriller, a fiction, a novel. And so it's so cliche to say, but when I wrote What Kind of Woman, it felt like everything I'd ever done was leading up to this, and I had been circling it and just not ever doing it. I've been circling these topics and and doing all these other things, and then when I sat down to write What Kind of Woman, it was like, here it is. This is what I've been waiting for this whole time. All these things I've always wanted to say, I was just dancing around it, and so to sit down and write it, it felt like scratching an itch. It was difficult, but it was also, I don't know, it was right there under the surface. Um, yeah, I didn't have an office. We just moved a few months ago, but when I wrote What Kind of Woman, we lived in a 1,200 square foot house with 6 people in it, 4 kids, me and my husband. So I wrote it in Panera, or I wrote it in the Panera parking lot, bumming their Wi-Fi during the pandemic. Um, that was more for the second book, but yeah, it was wild. It's like the most uninspiring environment, and yet I was very focused. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to look back and tell you how I wrote it or the process. I spent a lot of hours there. Um, I spent a lot of hours staring at a screen and panicking there, but it happened, and yeah, it was a wild experience, and also then to be done, and then have this huge thing happen to everyone else. With the pandemic, that feels like a lifetime ago, is what I mean. It feels like that happened so long ago, even though it didn't. It just feels like a long time ago, pre-pandemic times.
Yeah. No. So what has it been like to have the book come out in the midst of a pandemic, and how is that?
Can I tell you something? I have been doing these events for the past, and this has never happened. Just 1 second. Hi, honey. I'm on this event, and then I'll come out. Okay. Oh my goodness. My husband is at the dentist with 2, and the other 2 are banned from coming in here.
It's okay. My daughter sometimes sneaks in and crawls around on the floor, and I'm trying to like keep her under the thing. So it's fine.
Yeah. Sorry, what did you ask me? Oh, the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to spend a few weeks really crying about not having a book tour and like some kind of shallow things. Valid, but also not a big deal. I was safe. My family was safe. My husband was still able to work. I was still able to work. All the things, we were fine. I spent some time mourning that. I felt very sorry for myself. But when the book actually came out, and it was great. I just did this kind of thing from home, and it was successful, and it was wonderful. But yeah, it was also strange because I couldn't go anywhere. I didn't see my book in the bookstore for like 6 months after it came out because I didn't go anywhere. It was a very strange experience, but ended up being great. People really turned to poetry during difficult times. So yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So I think the reception has been, or well, not just I think, but like obviously the reception has been amazing for the book. And we all hear poetry doesn't sell and people don't read poetry. Clearly that is not true. And and more people should read poetry, but that doesn't mean that no one is. So tell me a little bit about the reception of this book. And I mean, I think when your New York Times interview came out, I had about 5 or 6 different friends email me the link for the show. They were like, okay, so here's your next guest. So just tell me a little bit about what that's been like. Just, what expectations did you have for the book? And then what has the reception been like for you?
I don't know if I had necessarily had expectations for the book. My hope was that I would earn back my advance, and which means sell some books to people besides my family and my friends. I wasn't thinking about the New York Times bestseller list only because I'm such a baby writer in that way. I've been writing since I've been in 2nd grade, but I didn't know about, I didn't know it was the logistics of it or even the possibility of it. It was not on my radar, which sounds like I'm making that up. It was so exciting. The few days leading up to it, my publisher was mentioning it, and then I was like, oh my gosh, is this something that I should be thinking about? And then I was worried about it. But in general, I didn't have that expectation for the book because I didn't think that was a possibility for poetry. It was not on my radar. Yes, but the reception was far more than I ever imagined and was wonderful. I will say, though, that it doesn't change anything. It doesn't, I still have to load the dishwasher 5 times a day and sit down and write and experience writer's block and imposter syndrome and sadness and take care of my kids and try to figure out how to schedule childcare and all of the things different. The moment I found out I was #1 on the bestseller list was a life-changing moment. I cried. It was wonderful. But then, I had to go give the kids a bath. Do you know what I'm saying? It's
yeah.
It was so great, and it's so wonderful to receive messages from people who this book has impacted. And at the same time, nothing's different. That makes no sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if that's something about having kids too. They just sort of keep you grounded. They don't know what that means, right? So
they don't care.
They
do not.
They don't care. No, you can
yeah.
show them your book, and they're like, "Oh, cool. When's your next one come? Can I read your next one?" And it's oh, no, not for 5 years, but.
Have you seen the movie Soul?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It also, that movie. I think about that movie a lot. There's that moment where he comes out of the jazz club and it's oh, what's next?
Yeah.
And the other jazz musician who's had success is kind of this is it. She kind of gives this parable about the 2 fish. The fish is looking for the ocean, and the fish is you live in the ocean. He's no, this is just water. I want to go to the ocean. You're in it. I feel that all the time. Kids or no kids, I think people who find success in any field kind of go through that cycle of kind of waiting to feel happiness over success, and really that's not going to give you happiness. Of course, moments of happiness, but in general, that's not what's fulfilling. And I thought I knew that until I went through it. People can tell you that till they're blue in the face, but I have to learn everything the hard way, every single thing, everything in the publishing world, everything about writing a book, everything about having kids. I have to learn everything the hard way. I have to do the worst job and then experience the pain of that, and then I learn it. And so, just I had to learn that, there's a certain amount of emptiness that follows success, because I think it's easy to wait to feel this moment of arrival, which does not come. So that has also been part of it.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. I've heard so many people say that, and they ask, okay, well, will you be satisfied after you publish a book? And then so many writers say no, like then it was just kind of like, well, now I have to write the next book, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
so
there's
actually,
no
yeah,
break.
no,
No.
no, especially in a society or a culture that judges you on the last thing that you did, and
Yeah.
where there's this pressure to do the next thing and the next thing and to be productive, and it's antithetical to creativity, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, and so is social media. Also
Mhm.
is such a creativity killer when you're constantly feeling like you have to perform, because if you perform well, then your books will sell. And so I really had to try to remove myself from that, and step away, and really give myself boundaries, because it can be such a buzzkill to
Yeah,
be constantly trying to perform.
yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to get to social media in a second, but before we do that, because I think your second book very much um, derives from the social media and performative and erasure culture. So let's get there in a second. But do you want to read a poem first from What Kind of Woman?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't pick one in particular. This is a mother. You call this a podcast? This is a mother show, and so I can pull from section 3, which does talk about motherhood. I'll read a poem called "Stronger That You Know." I wrote this for my friend Heather. This is called "Stronger That You Know." My friend's young daughter tells her mother, "You're stronger that you know." We repeat this even though it doesn't make sense. We say it to cheer each other up. We say it knowing how much harder it is that versus than. One suggests it was always inside you. The other suggests it's better you've learned the coin can flip either way. We tell our daughters they can be anything. We call them warrior, fierce, and brave, as if they arrive in war paint heels to fight off our old demons. And when they suffer, which they do, we offer our consolations. This is part of it. Take a deep breath. Look at you kicking your legs.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, I love that one. I mean, the whole book. If anyone who's listening has not read this book, please go get it. It's so weird. It's kind of like, but so yeah, let's talk a little bit about the sections of the books. You said there's the motherhood section. Throughout the course of a year, writing the poems. Can you talk a little bit about putting a collection together for anyone who's listening and kind of wondering what that process is like? Is it organic? Did you sort of strategically think I need like another one about motherhood here? How did that all come together?
Yeah, at the end there was a little bit of that, although most of it was writing a bunch and then my editor kind of looking for themes and then breaking them up into sections. There definitely was some, you know, the section, I think it was the middle section, part 2, that needed some more. And so I did try to focus on writing about relationships a little more at that point. But in general, yeah, it was more just like writing poetry, and then her and I coming together to kind of sort them out.
Yeah. I'm interested in the editor relationship too, and how the book came to your editor. What was the route by which you published this book? You mentioned you had a
Yeah,
few poems to start.
yeah. So I was writing, like I got an agent, 5, 6, I don't know how long, many years ago. So her name is Joanna. She's incredible. I was writing pieces for Huffington Post, and one of those pieces went viral, and so she reached out to me and asked if we could work together. And so for years we worked together. I was like trying to write this novel, and she was just very encouraging and almost like a mentor to me as well. Just someone to have in my corner. Um, and so when I approached her with poetry, I really held my breath, because I thought, oh my gosh, first I did personal narrative, and then I was doing this novel, and now I'm going to ask about poetry. And typically, well, I shouldn't say typically, I don't know anything, but I think sometimes with poetry, you don't necessarily, an agent doesn't often sometimes represent you with poetry. You have to represent yourself. It's hard to sell poetry. And so she said yes, obviously, and then she took, that little tiny manuscript that I had started and started pitching it to publishers. She pitched it during the summer, which you're not supposed to do because in summer, all the publishers go to lunch basically all day long and don't care about you. It was very nerve-wracking. I lost so much sleep. I had choice though, which is not always the case between two publishers. I ended up going with Harper. I'm sorry if you can hear noise. I don't know what they're doing. And so anyway, so I went with HarperCollins, and a woman named Mary is my editor. I felt like she understood my vision for this book, and it's been great. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's so exciting. And I think inspiring to other writers who, the gatekeepers can be so intimidating, I think, in publishing, right? The publishers and then the agents and then just all of the different levels that you go through. And I think it can be easy to feel overwhelmed by that and be afraid to try things sometimes, like to try going from fiction to poetry and just kind of, it's like, okay, well, this is what I want to write. And do you want to work with me on it? And clearly there are some who are risk takers and who are, who care about the work above all. So that's really inspiring to hear.
Yeah, I think you have to be your own best advocate in this situations. Again, something I had to learn the hard way. If you're not selling yourself, nobody cares about. Nobody cares if you're a writer in general. You're the one who has to care. So, I think half the battle is talking yourself into being the advocate, being the one who believes in the work, and it can be difficult because I don't know many writers who don't struggle with the feeling of just feeling inadequate, and I think half of it is just trying to at least faking that you believe in what you're doing.
Yeah, no, there's some performance involved, right?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, which leads back to social media and the performative aspect of social media. So let's talk about your second book. And well, actually, let's start with tell me about the personal narrative that went viral. Let's start there. The one the agent found you through.
Okay, sure. It was a piece called When You're Tightly Wound. I wrote it when my firstborn was a baby, and it was talking about the feeling of being very tightly wound as a mother, trying to write, trying to be a woman outside of being a mother, but also feeling like there's no space. It was very first-time mom vibes, for lack of a better description. And I think it really resonated with people. So I don't know where that is at this point, but it was short, but it was, people really, I think, just could see themselves in it.
Okay, well, I'm going to dig that up after this interview and see if I can find it and put it on our channel. But
I know I did ask them to take all those pieces down on Huffington Post. The internet, I don't know about you, but when I read things that I wrote 10 years ago, it's not that I want to censor as much as I don't really need to be quoted over and over things that I said 10 years ago. So I actually had all that stuff taken down. It was a really hard decision because I loved a lot of those pieces that I wrote, and I have them somewhere probably, but the internet keeps record of everything, for better or for worse. And I don't know. It's a constant battle of like letting go of ego and also be protective. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of has changed in 10 years online too, as far as
Oh my
where
goodness.
those
Yeah.
boundaries are. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
take me through your, I mean, this is kind of broad again, so apologies, but take me through your kind of your persona, your internet persona from like that point where your piece went viral
Yeah.
to recently when you've actually started turning those or turning responses via social media on their head to make art out of them.
Yeah. I started a blog, as you do, when I was, oh man, I want to say 23. I don't know. I haven't written, I haven't, I kind of wrote about, chronicled this in the author's note, and I hope this finds you well, but I was like very bored at my office job, my first jobs out of college, and so I started like a little website where I like wrote like short stories and like little feminist essays, as you do. And that's when I first started encountering what I call strangers on the internet. Um, and not because it had a big following, but because what was happening is that like I had like a readership of like, I don't know, 25. And then, but sometimes my website would like randomly come up in like a search result. And then I'd have like, Steve from Missouri, right? Like, show your tits, or get off the internet, things like that. Um, and I was like, oh my gosh, wow, no, WTF, delete, and that kind of, and then from then on, as readership grew, of course that comes up. That's just part of being on the internet, and my MO is always, what? No, this is like my own space, delete. And I kind of carried that through any platform. And then about a year ago, my book was about to come out, and so I was getting, a lot of messages, trying to figure out like, hey, what are my boundaries here? And then we had such a horrible thing happen in our nation's history, which unfortunately is very common, but George Floyd was murdered. And that was a very contentious time, of course, on the internet in general. And I had posted something about police reform, and a woman was upset with that, and so she wrote me an angry message. And again, like I said, normally I just hit delete or whatever. And I was kind of looking at it that day, and just on a whim, I did not think this through at all. I just kind of like was looking at it, and the words kind of rearranged in front of me, and so I took a screenshot and kind of blotted it out and made a poem out of it and posted it. And the response to that was very unexpected, and just people really connected with this, which, gosh, there's a lot of people out there, who are at odds with people on the internet, even more with people who they actually know. And so I kind of started doing this, but I started kind of seeing poetry everywhere then, my kids' worksheets and billboards and my spam email. And I started to make these erasure poems, which it was kind of like a party trick. It was like, I can kind of do this, and people seem to like it, and it is fun. I never expected to publish a whole book of them. I was asked a few times to do it. I said no, and then I finally said yes, and I'm proud of the book. However, it was difficult to write. It was during COVID. It was horrible to look at these messages for long amounts of time. I don't anticipate writing another one. I think people really connect with them because everyone can kind of find a moment in history for themselves of feeling attacked for what they believe, or even attacked in the way of like getting constant advertisements for like losing weight or looking younger. And I think that is what speaks to people. We're so tired. Women are so tired. I have I have noticed that more during the pandemic than ever. We're just really tired. And so I think a lot of the response to this book and to those poems is born out of that. And it was a much different experience than writing What Kind of Woman, only because it was just, I was tired too. And so I don't want to read over and over messages, from Steve talking to me about, you know, anti-feminist rhetoric. I don't know, and talking to me about women in the White House. It was so, I just wanted it to be over, and I'm glad it's over. Like I said, I don't really anticipate doing this the rest of my life, but who knows? I could have never predicted I would write a book of poetry, and then I could have never predicted I would write a book of erasure poetry. So who knows? But yeah, it's been a very unexpected journey, but I hope people like it.
I'm sure they will. I mean, I have to say that's how, other than the New York Times article, how I first kind of, my entry into your work. And I wish I could I should have prepared in advance what like the title of this poem, but there was this poem where you got a message about, and maybe you know exactly which one I'm talking about, but it was a man who was talking about his daughters and how he was going to raise his daughter, that one. And
I'm happy to read that one too.
Oh, please read that one. That is, I have to say, one of the most powerful things I read in a very long time. And I shared it with everybody I knew. So I'd love for you to read that and let's talk about it.
Sure. This is from I Hope This Finds. Oh, it's the right way. It's not mirrored. Okay. This is I Hope This from I Hope This Finds You Well. It looks really pink. It is pink. This is so this book, it's kind of hard to read out loud because half of the poem is visual. So this is a message I received, and then this is the poem I made from it. So I'll read it in order. When Chad is a Dad is what the poem is called. And he writes, I think it's funny how much you hate men and then go ahead and have this husband like he doesn't apply. Not buying your book, but if I was, I would get it for my daughters to show them how not to be. Even though you'll never see this, it's worth sharing. Not all women think like you or believe men are inherently against women. They might even say they appreciate men. Can't fathom this? Maybe read a book outside your What Kind of Woman bubble. Sincerely, a man who believes his daughters can be both independent and polite. This is the poem. It's funny how men go ahead and have daughters, even though they can't fathom what daughters can be.
Yeah.
There you go. It's
just
anyway.
No, but that is just incredible how he turned this guy's musings on the politeness of women and what daughters should be, and then he has no idea what daughters could actually be. It makes me tear up.
Oh.
So there you go. Very successful poem.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks to Chad for writing it.
Yes. Do you ever get people writing you back after you create an erasure poem from their message?
Oh, I block them.
Do you block them before you post the poem?
Yeah.
Or after?
Yeah, I do.
That's good.
I do, yes.
Yeah. I wonder what inspires people. I mean, I don't have an answer to this, and I don't expect you to, but what inspires people to write this kind of message to a stranger on the internet, and what it is about you that sort of draws them in, what is it that they see in you that it's I need to engage with her and tell her all of the ways in which she is damaging children or men?
I don't know. I have a lot of theories. I think it's best to kind of read this book and maybe come up with one's own theory. I think we're all fragile people, and it's not just men, it's also women. Um, I think that when we find others who maybe think differently or look differently or talk differently, there's this threatening aspect. And I think that especially women who kind of maybe go against the grain a little bit are very threatening to other people, especially women of color. Um, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many people who receive volumes more messages and ugliness than me. And yeah, I think it's feeling threatened and feeling your lifestyle threatened or your values set threatened that really sets people off. I mean, I think it's kind of hard to imagine. I think that for a lot of us, it's very hard to imagine sending a message like that because it's like, I would be so embarrassed to send that message to someone. But I don't know. I think if you're pushed to a certain point, it feels like maybe a way to blow off some steam. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Something about the anonymity of the internet. I mean, I guess that's been written about or posited that people feel comfortable like behind the screen.
Behind the
Right?
screen, absolutely. That really adds to it, of course. Yeah. I've had some people say some really rude things to my face, but nothing like I'm talking about writing and writing these books. Of course, that's what I mean, not just in general. But nothing like what I've been emailed or sent messages about. I do think that really adds a layer there, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, and just I think, how do I want to put it? Like, people either don't think about the human on the other end who's receiving the messages.
Yeah.
Because I think if you were face to face with somebody and you sort of lay into a person like that, that forces you to confront them as a human, and it might not be quite as, I don't know. But you said you've had people respond to you about writing in face to face too?
I've just had, I was at a class reunion and a former classmate came up to me and said, he doesn't normally read women writers, but he was going to give me a chance. That's not super aggressive or like threatening, but it's rude and annoying. And there has been versions of that throughout my friend and family circles because that's just what it's like to be a woman writer. And that's kind of what I mean. It's like, sure, this is worse because it's meaner, but it's also kind of the same. And I think that's what people are responding to in this and just feeling that and kind of recognizing all the little microaggressions that can lead up to a message like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did you want what kind of woman to feel like? Like, did you have a feeling that you were tapping into for this book?
With what kind of woman?
Yeah.
Um,
And then we'll talk about the second one, but start with the first one.
Oh, please. No, with what kind of woman? It was a mix of love and rage, which of course is so close to each other. Yeah, just a second. I'm just going to mute myself so I can say the words, wipe yourself. Like I said, I've never not had someone watching the kids during one of these interviews, but today it worked out that I have two of them here. Excuse me.
No, but this is very appropriate. It's okay.
Yeah. I hope he can just do it himself there. Anyway, oh my goodness. Yeah, just a lot of love towards people in my life, friends and my children. even my husband, who I do love. And also the rage that comes along with being married and being a mother, and the expectations of those things. I felt both of those emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it really comes through in all of the pieces of the book. Just love and rage, that and how they work together, right? I mean, that's kind of motherhood right there. Love and rage.
Yeah, yes, that is. It's very true.
Yeah. I had some love and rage this morning toward my little one.
Yeah.
Exactly. So same question about, I hope it finds you well.
Oh, I felt sad. If I'm being honest, I felt really sad. Do you hear him on the mic?
Just the faintest bit, but it's okay.
What if I paused for just a second?
That's fine. Yeah, we'll keep it going. It's
right back.
That's okay.
Yeah, interview.
We're getting unadulterated mother writer experience right here. I think as Kate goes off to help her little one in the bathroom. So she'll be back with us in a second. I will share Kristen Baer O'Keefe, who was on the show a few weeks back now, maybe a few months ago, says, "So excited Kate Baer's with you tonight. Love her work." Me too. Absolutely. And when she comes back, maybe we'll have her read another poem for us. Oh, and I think she's rejoining us. There she is.
Hi.
Don't worry.
I'm so sorry about that.
A little bit for you. So don't worry.
Anyway.
Yeah, like I said, this is the perfect interview to be interrupted by children, because that's.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. My 4-year-old is turning 5 on Friday, and he has yet to conquer some bathroom things that he was calling me, and I thought it's better for me to just than to listen to him for 30 more minutes. Anyway.
You know what? We can talk about that for a second. That's a good. So my 4.5, my almost 5-year-old turns 5 in August. And same thing, like she's going to camp in 2 weeks, I think. And it's kind of like, maybe you should know how to do certain things in the bathroom before you. So we're working on the same thing. Yes, but they still call you. It's like, Mama.
Oh my gosh, I know. It's really something. Anyway,
it's
okay. Like I said, I've probably done 100 of these and I've not been interrupted yet. But I knew it was bound to happen, because when you're doing book tours from home, that's just going to happen. Anyway, yes, I hope this finds you well. I felt pretty sad the whole time. I probably shouldn't say that. My publisher would probably be like, you should say something nicer. It was sad the whole time, but that's just how it doesn't feel sad now. It just felt sad when I was writing it. And it's not all sad. There's some positive pieces in there too. It's about half and half, because we felt like it couldn't just be a big downer book. And so they asked me to put in some positive ones in there too. And so it's not all sad. There's some light in there too.
You know, I can see how it would be a sad book to write. Like you said, if you have to engage with these messages in such depth and with such concentration, that is hard. That's grueling.
Yeah.
But even like the one that you read us, I think you turn it into something so beautiful and hopeful and inspiring. So yeah, I don't know if that counts as one of the sad ones or one of the happy ones, but
yeah. No, I think it does. That does really help.
Yeah, I think so. I'm excited to see how people will respond to it. But what are you working on now? So are you working on something completely different? What?
I have another full-length book of poetry out next fall. Not this fall, so fall 2023. Wait, no, fall 2022.
Yeah.
What are we in? Yeah. So I am working on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll probably take a break for a little bit. That's my hope.
Can you share anything about the poems in the new collection and how they might be different from the first two?
I think they might be a little darker, but I'm not quite sure. I mean, I haven't written it yet. I maybe have a quarter, and so I don't really know where it's going. I think it's going in a slightly different direction, but I'm not sure yet. I don't know what to say about it. It's not titled, and it hasn't been really touched very much by anybody else. So I'm also curious to know how it will be different. I'm not sure.
But not erasure poems this time.
Not erasure poems. Yeah.
No.
It'll be more like What Kind of Woman. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm so intrigued. Oh yeah, and tell us when I Hope This Finds You Well comes out.
Let me look on the thing here. It tells me. Oh, it comes out on October 9th.
October 9th. Okay, and pre-order? Do you know when pre-orders start?
Yeah, you can pre-order it anytime from anywhere.
Okay, well, we'll put the link up, too, for pre-ordering.
Okay, great. Yeah. My website has the links to all of that. It'll also be available in the UK. And I'm hoping to be in New York the week of Hub. So I'll probably be doing some events there, which is really fun because I skipped that last time.
Yeah, it would be nice to actually meet people in person, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Since we have a few minutes left, could I ask you, could you send us out with another poem? Just any one of your choice that you'd want to share with us.
Oh, sure. Absolutely can do that. Sorry, I'm just like, what should I read here? Okay, this is called My Friend Bethany Rages at the News. A beautiful celebrity woman is asked, "What's your beauty secret?" She answers, "Hot lemon water every morning." She does not answer time. She does not say the names of every woman who scrubs her bathroom tile and carries children to and from the car. A child is shot at a convenience store. An expert asked, "What is the derivation?" He answers, "Parents and video games." He does not answer guns. He does not mention gross convenience. He does not say how an angry man can buy several killing machines. A young girl tries to save the earth. An online post asks, "What is her importance?" A man answers, "She is nothing but an ugly whore." He does not answer, "I am lonely." He does not say how every time they show her face, all he sees is every girl who has taken her love away.
Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.
And thank you so much for joining us. This has been really fun.
This was really fun. Thank you for having me. And thank you for bearing with me during my childcare issues here.
No, not at all. I think it adds some texture to the conversation.
I'm so glad.
Absolutely. So stick around afterward and I'll say goodbye then. But thank you so much again for joining, and this has just been great.
This has been wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Kate. Oops. Yep, there we go. Another rookie mistake. Clearly, I am overcome today after hearing such amazing poetry. So thank you all for joining me tonight on Writer Mother Monster. The next 2 weeks, we're taking a little break, but we'll be back July 1st, and look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you again for spending some time with us this evening. You can watch the conversation again, listen to the audio, read the transcript, all on writermothermonster.com within the next week or so. And I'll see you all in July. Good night.